So you have a freebie on my website, but what's the best way to promote my podcast management business when I'm a guest speaker on other podcasts? So, freebie, best way to promote my podcast. Okay. This would be, does your freebie relate to what you do in your business? That would be question number one. Number one, is your freebie directly correlated to your podcast management business? Because if it's not, you need a new freebie. You need something that's going to drive someone to where you could say, oh, I actually have a free resource on my website that people can go download. It's totally free and it will walk them through. And I'm thinking specifically of like a checklist. Like, here's what you need to do in order to be prepared to hand off your podcast services or whatever. So maybe it looks like them deciding, oh, this is a good one. Now we're in the thick of it now. What about if you created a freebie that is all about deciding where they are overwhelmed, what tasks they want to keep, and what they absolutely want to delegate? Like maybe it's something that they hate doing, and they may even realize that they need to hire more than just a podcast manager. Who knows? I actually saw a post in a podcast group that I'm in where somebody was saying like, I need one person to do all of these things. And several people that do podcast management and social media management, they were like, for what you're saying right there, you need to hire 2 or 3 people, or you need to hire a full-time person that's going to do all of that, because like what you're asking isn't necessarily possible. So I like the idea of maybe having a checklist that's like, here's how to know if you're ready to hire someone, or how to know if you're ready to outsource your podcast management. There you go. That's a much better. There you go. Take that title. If you don't already have a title of one, you could say, how to know I'm ready to hire a podcast manager. And this is a checklist. Like maybe number 1 is, have you launched? If they haven't even launched, now okay, well, they actually need all the behind the scenes before their show is even out, because you'll have people that want to hire you from the get-go before they ever start anything. Then you'll have people that are like, I'm in the messy middle. I started a bunch of stuff, but now I'm overwhelmed. And I'm just like, oh, ready to pull my hair out. Please, like, Diane, can I pass all of this over to you? So yeah. Okay. So you have a checklist on your website right now. Perfect. So let me go back to your question. The best way to promote my podcast management business when I'm a guest, I would just get comfortable saying I have clients that I've worked with, and building in language into the way that you speak. And speaking of my friend, Heather Sager, she talks a lot about this on her podcast and in her content, to where you're naturally, organically flowing in phrases into the conversation that give you that authority and establish that you do what you do. So if I were a podcast manager, I would say, yeah, I've worked with, and you could name drop if you want to, like you could, if you are able to disclose someone's name, you wouldn't say their first name or their podcast or their whole name and their podcast, but you could say, yeah, I actually work with one of my clients, Diane. She had a problem with insert problem. And then you could tell a story about how you've worked with that client. You're not overly promoting your business and what you do. You're just talking about how someone had a problem in your community. You help them solve it. Therefore, this establishes you as an authority in the listener's eyes and gives them that like, oh, Diane solves this problem. Maybe I'll have that problem. So I should pay attention to what she's doing. I hope that helps. Let me know. But this is also a conversation that you should have with the host of the show before you ever get on, and say, do you mind if I talk about my podcast management services at the end? Because what I will typically do when someone is a guest on my show, I would say, hey, at the very end of the conversation, I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell people where to find you. And if you've listened to my podcast, you'll hear like, hey, this was a great conversation. Can you tell everybody where they can find you? And it's in that moment that you have to decide where you're going to send people. If you're able to give a specific URL, some shows let you, some shows don't. Some people will let you give off 10 URLs, which I don't recommend doing that. I recommend if you have a free resource, you send them to that specific page. You say, go to dianefay.com/freebie or whatever it is. And then that's the only URL you share with them, because from there you get someone on your email list. Then you have your follow-up email sequences that you're going to send to them. And in those emails, you can say, check out the podcast, follow me on Instagram. Here's my free, webinar or my book or event, whatever it is that you have to offer that's also valuable. But yeah, that's a great question.